Welcome into the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Wyman Wheeler. Now, this is going to be an off-the-cuff episode. Usually when I get down and start to do an episode, I like to write out a little bit, put up an outline, but this happened just 2 hours ago, so this is brand new. I'm just giving my honest thoughts. I've gathered some things together, and here we go. If you've clicked on the video, you already know, so let's dive into it. According to Jordan Schultz, I know several other people reported it. That's just who I bookmarked. According to Jordan Schultz on Twitter, breaking news: the Chiefs are expected to sign former Pro Bowl wide receiver JuJu Smith-Schuster, per multiple sources. JuJu reunites with Kansas City, who looks to add another weapon for Patrick Mahomes. So, of course, you already know JuJu was instrumental in our 2022 campaign, eventually resulting in a Super Bowl victory against the Philadelphia Eagles, where JuJu made some key plays in that game and throughout the regular season and playoffs. So when it comes to my thoughts on this, I was talking to some friends, whoever, it doesn't really matter who, a couple of weeks ago, about the possibility of JuJu coming back, because as soon as we found out that the Patriots were looking to release him, it was all the talk was like, oh, well, we could use some wide receiver depth. Why don't the Chiefs bring him back? And my thought on that was, last year we had all these drop problems, right? It was the talk of the league. The Chiefs are dead. These wide receivers cannot catch. And the problem with JuJu in this season's training camp with the Patriots, and to some extent last year as well, I know he had a lot of injury concerns and he only played a handful of games for them, and he had his worst year as an NFL starter. But the thing with JuJu in this year's training camp was he was having drop problems. And so I don't think adding another receiver to the roster with drop problems is going to help your wide receiver room that clearly already has a history of drop problems. I mean, Hardman, Tony, Sky, Watson had some drops. We don't have to get into all that. We know the Chiefs had drop problems last year across the board. It wasn't just one person, it was everyone. Kelsey had drops even. So, I don't know. I don't think JuJu is a fix-all to the wide receiver depth issue that the Chiefs currently have. I think it's more of a situation where he's a Band-Aid on an open wound. However, on the other side of it, I feel like this may be divisive to a lot of Kansas City fans, because on the flip side of this coin, Mahomes had a chemistry with JuJu. And in the one season he played with the Chiefs, he did rather well. So you got to think that chemistry is still there. It's nice to have a familiar face back in the locker room who has chemistry with Mahomes and some of those wide receivers that are still on the team. So there's that perspective. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I made some roster predictions as a part of my first video with the KC Sports Report, and I had the Chiefs wide receiver room looking like a six-man group with Brown, Worthy, Rice, Hardman, Watson, and at the time I had Kadarius Toney. Now, today, after seeing what's happened, Toney just falling down the roster, getting reps in exclusively with the threes, I think Toney is a long shot at this point to make the roster. But that's who I had. I had Brown, Worthy, Rice, Hardman, Watson, and Toney. And we also have to consider that Brown is going to be out for maybe a couple weeks with that injury that he suffered in the first preseason game. So there's really a lot to break down here. But who do I think is locked in at wide receiver? So here's what I have. I think Xavier, Hollywood, and Rice, obviously, they're locks. JuJu, we wouldn't bring him in if he wasn't a lock. So he's safe. That's 4. And I also think Justin Watson is a lock. There's been a lot of minor discourse. It's not like a huge deal. But a lot of people are like, why do people think Watson is a lock? Well, Andy Reid sits him when he sits the starters. So he's a starter. He is valuable to this team. He's rarely a problem. So he's a solid fit in at wide receiver 5. Now, the outsiders are Mecole, Nico, Ross, Sky, and Toney. I'll say it right out. I think Sky and Toney I think they're gone. A lot of people seem to think Sky has a lot of goodwill with the coaches. I really hope that's not true. I would like to see Sky and Tony gone. I don't think you can have Tony, with all the problems he had last year, on the field and off, and Sky, it makes no sense to me to keep a wide receiver who can't get separation and make big time contested catches. Like, that's just a waste of a roster spot to me. So I have them off. Where I think it comes down to is Hardman and Ross. I think Nico, he's a great story. We want to see him succeed. I think he needs maybe another year on the practice squad to really reach his full potential. And maybe next year in 2025, he has a shot to make the roster. But to me, the outsiders, who's going to fit into that 6 wide receiver spot, I think it's going to be Hardman or Ross. Now, the case for Ross is he can make the go up and get it big time contested catch. Hardman is another speed guy. We clearly have a lot of speed guys on this roster already. Xavier, Hollywood, Watson is a speed guy. He plays on the wide. So it really just comes down to if Nagy and Reed want another speed guy to really just hammer it in that this 2024 Chiefs team is a deep threat team like we haven't seen before, or is he going to add in another slot receiver who can make those big-time red zone plays over the top of the defensive backs? And that's the perspective if you want Ross to be that final receiver in a 6-man room. There's always a possibility that we take in a 7th wide receiver. I do not think that to be the case. I think we're not going to sacrifice having a 10-man O-line room, and I think there's going to be at least, well, I'll have to go back and check, but bottom line, Carson Steele is making this roster, people. He is making this roster. You can't tell me any different. Carson Steele is a lock. We know this. Come on, make it happen, Chiefs. Anyway, going through a couple more things that are worth talking about this JuJu signing. According to Spot Rack on Twitter, quote, the Chiefs are likely getting JuJu Smith-Schuster at his vet minimum $1.2 million for this year, 2024, as the Patriots are on the hook for $7 million minus whatever he earns elsewhere this season. So, a little rough for the Patriots, not too bad for the Chiefs. And that price being considered with JuJu, honestly, you can't be too mad about it. We know the chemistry he has with Mahomes, and he's for that low price of $1.2 million. I would love a low paycheck of $1.2 million. All that aside, something interesting to note, Price Carter on Twitter, if you know him, you know him, a great guy. JuJu Smith-Schuster snaps by position in 2022 for the Chiefs. Here's how it shook out. In the slot, he had 315 snaps, and at wide, he had 451, which is interesting because a lot of talk about JuJu is like, oh, he's a slot receiver. He's really good in the slot. But he played a lot of wide out for the Chiefs, so he may be playing a lot of slot and a lot of wide. So he's a versatile piece. We just need to see if he still has a little bit of juice left in the tank after the worst season of his career in New England. To wrap it all up, I think it'll come down to Hardman or Ross to be the 6-man in this wide receiver room. I don't think it's going to be a 7-man room. If I had my choice, I would go with Hardman. I'm sure a lot of people are screaming at me right now, but Hardman has been with the team for years. I say if you're going to go big, go home and just have all these super speedy guys on your team. I hate to see it for Ross, but having him on the practice squad is a good sign. And who knows, maybe the Chiefs will make a surprise trade with one of these guys. Maybe Sky will get shipped out of town. Maybe Veach will get a pick for Tony. Crazier things have happened? I don't know. But those are my thoughts. Cut downs for the 53-man roster. The final roster before the season starts are tomorrow, so we'll have the answers soon enough. But I want to know, what do you think? Who do you think will make the cut? Will the Chiefs keep a 7th wide receiver on the roster? Whatever you think, leave your thoughts down in the comments below. If you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on Twitter at WymanWheel. That's Wheeler without the ER, WymanWheel. And follow KC Sports Report, of course, for more content and video updates. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe and hit that bell. to KC Sports Report here on YouTube for more Chiefs content. Until next time, thank you for watching, and go Chiefs.